Hello.
Hello, Chris. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good, good, very good. Super happy today.
Super happy today. Where are you based out of, by the way?
I'm in Kirkland. It's a city close by to Seattle.
Okay. You like the area?
Yeah, I'm in front of the Lake Washington, so the view is quite nice, especially this moment, in the summer.
Yeah, in the
So it's
summer.
very, very, very nice. Yeah, the few moments in Seattle that you can really appreciate the sun, the views, and so on.
Yeah, enjoy your 3 months.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna sort of talk about you here, and some of sort of what you do. And if I was to do that, I would say that you are the director of cognitive AI, which sounds like, at least these days, like kind of the same thing, cognitive and AI. But it didn't always. It wasn't always. But uh, we would love for you to talk to us today about um, what you do and what's going on. And you do this work at Amelia, um, which, interestingly enough, is a company working in the space of call centers and sort of that sort of ecosystem of uh, helping customers get the answers they're looking for. And I think that's a very interesting subject, and we'd love for you to talk to us about that today.
Sure, sure. No, as you say, the cognitive AI, so it's something that, what does it mean? No? So can mean anything at this moment. But yeah, in our case, starting with Amelia, so Amelia is an AI company, so we are based in New York. Our main product is also called Amelia. It's a virtual assistant, or what we like to call is a digital. So she is created like this,
She's a digital what?
the digital employee.
Digital employee. Oh,
Yeah, we love to, or we like to do that. So to call her like that, because at the end of the day, so Amelia is going to be hired by a company. Then we're going to train Amelia on whatever the company needs to do. And then we're going to check her performance review. Then we're going to improve her performance. And then probably if everything goes well, so it's going to be promoted and so on and so on, no? So that's more or less the idea. So we have a platform. The platform is created as a digital employee or as a virtual assistant, and this is how we believe Amelia is the place to be, no?
fantastic. So, um, there's a lot to unpack there. I think for some people it might sound fantastical. So maybe we'll do it in sort of small pieces. Um, let's talk about what exactly the problem is that you're kind of trying to solve for. Or sort of how you would think about initially sort of attacking the problem, and then how Amelia emerged from that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. So for instance, in my team is the one who implement Amelia in the company. So we start from the problem, what you said, no? So usually companies, what they want to do is to increase their customer satisfaction, or they want to reduce or save some money, no? Because they have huge call centers or a lot of human agents trying to respond properly to a customer, and they want to grow. And the human capacity is limited. So with Amelia, you are able to increase that capacity as much as you can, because Amelia doesn't go to the bathroom. Amelia doesn't have vacations or something like that. She's able to attend the customers every time that you need or the customer needs. So basically, when customers come to us, is with that kind of problem. So okay, let's try to save some money. Let's increase the NPS. Let's increase the customer satisfaction. Let's decrease the handle average time. of the calls or the interactions that we have with the customers. So the idea is to increase in some sort the experience that they have with the customers. No, so that's basically what they have. And then what we usually do is like, what kind of channels do you want to address these kind of problems? So usually what we have right now with some data, and that probably you have a return of investment of this kind of solution, is call centers. Because call centers, you usually have KPIs, you usually have your agents, what kind of request the customer does, how much time they take to resolve, what is the customer satisfaction of these specific calls, etc., etc. No, so if you want to have a real impact in your bottom line, so probably you will go through the call center. Then the pandemia, the COVID situation gave us the digital part, no, which is, I don't know, WhatsApp, mobile, SMS, social media, etc., is growing, but comparing to call centers, not necessarily is the same amount. There's not the same volume. So the impact that you probably have is more in call centers, but also the social part or the digital part is also growing.
Is that in is that is that in terms of, and you're speaking specifically in terms of being able to answer customer questions? So there's the call center channel, and then there's the social media channel where you're also answering questions there, and you're considering both parts in terms of what Amelia is solving for.
Exactly. And also it's very important because sometimes depending on the customer, so the company, customers are more willing to share information through, I don't know, WhatsApp or SMS or call centers rather than social media. So you don't share in your Twitter or your Facebook Messenger, hey, this is my ID, this is my passport, etc., etc. So sometimes, depending on the channel, so you will be more informative. So you will basically answer some questions, but then probably in WhatsApp, SMS, call centers, you are more in the automated part, which at the end of the day, you are going to reduce some human agent interactions in that side.
Right. So we've talked about the channels, different ways that Amelia reaches out. Maybe we'll talk about some of the challenges with first we can talk about some of the challenges at this layer, right? And before we go into the sort of more technical layer of challenges. So at this tier, what is it like to have customers interact with this, at this level? And then how are these, or how is this interacting with these other channels, right? So what I mean by that is, just like you said, there's going to be the expectations for each one that make things easier or harder. With call centers, the assumption is that it's as robust a person as you can get when you have a call center. And for WhatsApp, there's a little bit more flexibility because people actually want to speak in less time. And that's as from a customer's point of view, that's my perception of it. But if there's something else that even might be more surprising or is more unique based on your experience that you found, please go ahead. But so what is it like to sort of solve for those two places, or what have you found as issues in those two places or all these channels?
This is very interesting because each channel has their own characteristics, no? So in voice, probably, so what you will have, or in call centers, you will have some problems, for example, with names or addresses, So it's like, especially, so in my case, I'm in charge of the South European and Latin American countries. So in my case, so the English names that goes to Latin names and the combination and so on. So right now it's quite difficult because probably John can be written is like a John or Yon, just as simple as that. So how can you verify these kind of things? And this is the challenge that we find when you need to have kind of verification based on spelling or something like that, or reservations with airlines. It's like, okay, my reservation is A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, no? But for example, if you go for CS, MN, TD, so TD or MN is kind of phonetic, is quite similar. And if you, for example, right now we are talking with wood quality, nobody is having some noise around. But if you're in the middle of the park trying to call to your airline because you are running to the airport and there is a lot of noise around, so these specific things are very challenging for a voice perspective, no? But in the other hand, in the chat, so the challenges that we find is like you can put more graphic things, you can put images, you can put buttons, you can put anything. So you make in some sort life easier for the customer. But is that intelligent enough? So what is the balance between to be naturally speaking or going for too many options that you don't give the customer the freedom to express themselves? If you find like, hey, I can help you in 1, 2, 3, 4, so people is going to think that it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So they don't think about the option 5, the 8, or the 19. When it's different, for example, in call centers, is how can I help you? And the customer says, hey, I need about this. With the WhatsApp, the balance or with the written channels, so to speak. So the balance between options or graphics comparing to more freedom in terms of just write whatever you like is something that usually we have as a challenge, no?
Right. So, and just to summarize, the expectations on voice calls it's very open-ended. Expectations on written channels is usually you ask users to select a bunch of options, but the fifth option that doesn't exist might be the issue that they have. So you have to give those options a very well bounded. And you could also do some chats where, you're just having a conversation on chat, but that has its challenges as well. And then just like sounds and identification of people has its challenges. So what I sort of so basically, have you solved this? How have you guys solved those problems with that? Like how all those different layers, the identification problem, the open-ended question problem, the bounded question problem. How have you guys attacked that? Because those are very general, and then you guys also have to apply it to every possible industry. So which is going to be the next question. So just show us how you talk to us about how you've been able to bound that. You know what I mean?
That's a very interesting question, because in the case of call centers, when we need the verification in terms of streets, names, or what we were talking about, what we are doing is to be a real omni-channel platform. So in this case, for example, it's like the customer is calling, and then we have the number, and we just verify that this number, for example, comes from a mobile phone. Okay, if that's a mobile phone, then we say, okay, we are sending right now an SMS, and please send me your full name, or give me the address, where are you, no? So then you receive the SMS, Amelia is waiting in the call until you send the SMS, and then once Amelia receives it, say, okay, I received that your name is Victor Garayar, so then please, let's continue with the next questions of the call. So that's the beauty that we have right now, the balance between having a real omni-channel platform in which we still in the call, and then we can go through, I don't know, WhatsApp, SMS, or whatever it is, and then we continue the call with the customer without any issues. So that's one side of these problems. And in the other side, for example, with written channels, what we start is like we make phases of the implementation, because what right now the customer is used to interact is basically with buttons, with options, and so on. And usually what in written channels or in social media, WhatsApp, SMS, what they expect for is to start with a few use cases or a few requests. So we usually start with 1, 2, 3, 4, because you only have the 1, 2, 3, 4 options. But then what the customer is getting used to and probably we open some we open the questions in order to get what other kind of request the customer is asking for. Then we select, or we can analyze all the information and say, hey, the fifth option can be this. And then we start opening. So so just to summarize, we start closing the implementation. We close the scope with 1, 2, 3, 4, but then we start opening based on how the customer behaves, what are the requests from the customer. So that's more or less how we address this situation.
So at least for the written channels, it's you're doing something I think is unique, which is sort of generative questions, in the sense that it learns in the call what questions the next question to ask, but it's not necessarily a pre-existing list. It's a list that is something that's emerged from the conversation. So how do you is there a way to make sure? Is there a way to make sure that it's always it doesn't hallucinate, and the question is trying to ask, or not even make sure, but try to is there a way to bound, because these models have a tendency to hallucinate. So if you're allowing them to generate questions based on the context of the user, or at that particular moment, it can hallucinate. So how have you been confident that every emergent question is, it doesn't take much, maybe even a word that, that's present tense or past tense or some sort of like grammatical addition that can make it mean something else and lead the customer in a different direction, even though it's mostly correct, in terms of just even like identifications of things. So is there, that's a very hard problem, because it's the hallucination is actually a feature of AI. So how have you guys been able to deal with that?
That's a very interesting question. So what we usually do is we separate it in 3 layers. Okay. The first layer is the intent or the request that we know that exists. Okay. Even though that we have the 4 options that we were talking about, we know that usually customers go for the 5th to the 15th. So we try to train the model good enough to capture those requests and say, hey, I'm not trained yet, but I would love to attend this kind of request. So let me transfer you to my human colleague. Okay. Then what we do is at the second layer. The second layer, depending on how the customer, what kind of documentation and information they have. So we use generative AI in terms of depending on each documentation that they have. No? They have policies, or they have some documents that we can use to, or maybe information from the web, and saying, okay, we can answer those kind of questions based on this specific information. Okay. Then probably you will have some hallucination, but we try to encapsulate as much as we can. So it's not like a bunch of documents. We need to really check that the information that we have doesn't overlap so much among each other and so on. And then finally...
Why is the overlap a risk, if you don't mind me asking? Why is the overlapping documentation becoming an issue? Go ahead.
That's a very good question, because it makes you hallucinate more.
Because of you doubling down on the data?
Exactly. So probably, I don't know, if you are calling about, to block a card, but then you have in the banking industry, but then you have the block of the card, block of the account, to block, I don't know, your mobile user, no, in the mobile app. Blocking can be anywhere. So probably the blocking part can overlap. So I'm saying very simple example, no? But the blocking, some sort, can generate an answer that you not necessarily are waiting for, no? So you are giving for to reset your password in the mobile app, and you're asking for your blocking of your credit card, no? So these kind of things probably may happen. So that's why we are very careful on what kind of documentation or what kind of information we are including into the model. So in B2B, you cannot afford so much those hallucinations. That's the problem,
Right. So there's a lot of cleaning that has to happen, in order for this to work out. Yeah, and so this, I think this is a good segue into the idea of integration, because this is a very general solution. As general as it is, it still needs to be massaged quite thoroughly into a company's context. It's essentially a generic model that, once you massage into a company's context, can have utility in the space of communicating with customers from so that's quite the challenge. You alluded to some of the ways that you attack that challenge with deduplication of information. But if we were to start again and talk about, in general, how do you approach integrating into organizations, and sort of make it, plan out how this solution can, sit in the right place and have conversations with customers with, there's just a myriad of technologies that people use and a myriad of ways that they store it. There's just so many, there's so many opportunities for a problem. So how do you guys systematize that in a way that your outcomes are consistent?
That's a very good question. So in this case, what we try to do is we are very close to the company. In what sense? Into check the data. At the end of the day, AI goes to data, goes through data. So, and if we want to make an impact, should be for the request the customer does, and that has the more volume, so to speak. Okay. So what we usually do is, either if this is call center or written channel, whatever we were speaking. So in terms of channels, what we try to do is get as much as data as we have. So why? Because then we can answer some questions. What kind of request the customer usually does? No? Then what are the complexities of those requests? And finally, if this is something that as a company is able to solve with integrations, because the idea is not only understand, hey, I need to block my card. Yeah, perfect. I understand that you will want to block the card. I cannot block your card. So what is the utility here? So there is no impact. At the end of the day, we need to block the card and say, hey, your card, which ends in 1234, is blocked right now. And for instance, you are going to receive an SMS with a number, so you can go to the bank branch and then you can ask for a new card, or you have this link so you can ask for your new card, so they're going to deliver in your home. So this kind of thing is something that is very powerful and impactful for the company and also for the customer. So this is the three layers or the three columns that we try to do. One is the volume of requests. So we go for what I call the 80-20. The 80% of the calls should go for probably 10, 20, or 25 requests. Then of those requests, what are the ones that we really can understand? And finally, from those that I can understand, what are the ones that I really can integrate and can really resolve? So that's our goal: resolve.
Is there a percentage that you guys try to attack on, at this level? This is where the technology has maximum effect. What I mean by that is, you said 80-10 rule, which is great. But it's a sort of, if of the 80%, we have to have a 60% accuracy, which is really high, because you're cutting in half operation costs basically. But that you guys really sort of want to go for. Is there a boundary there? Because I can imagine this, like every industry, the complexity of the questions that they get in these calls is going to differ. So that even something like as simple as the amount of data for airlines is different from the amount of data for banks, right? In the sense of how much it moves. The airline data disappears every time, right? And banking data just grows in the steady and literally is kept in the safe. right? So there's a lot of that. So so just speak to that. So these different kinds of these different spaces. How do you measure? How do you measure a consistent level of success with that in mind, with all this in mind? Because you have to make sure that Amelia improves in general as a general solution.
Exactly. No, so that's why we are very close with companies to get whatever we need to go for, because there are different kind of strategies. So there are strategies, for example, that we have with some of the customers saying, "Hey, I want a in the front." Just understanding any request that she has, and then a percentage is going to be resolved, and then another percentage is going to be transferred to a human agent. Because what we were talking about is like, if you have options, you reduce the scope. When you don't have options, the customer is able to express whatever they want, and then goes to the correct part of the tree that you have in a call center, not either a human agent or with Amelia. So that's a good thing. So based on that, so we make the numbers. The idea is that, for example, in every use case, depend on the request, on what we call the use case, we can go for an understanding around 70% at the beginning to 90 plus in 3, 4 to 6 months, which is high. It's very high. I know. Yeah, and it's very fast. Yeah. And but this is something that we could get based on experience and the how robust is the platform right now. And then aside the understanding on the accuracy, then is how much of these requests we are able to really resolve. And that's a tricky question, because then we need the company APIs to make the effort, you know? And the idea is that we usually, what we want to do is like, we make business cases with our customers. That's our difference probably with other platforms. Maybe they do the same or not, but this is what we try to do. Okay, let's make a business plan, because you are going to put some X money and we want to return Y money, you know, and it's going to return in some amount of months, or probably during the first year, or during the beginning of the second year, depending on what is the scope around. No, so that's more or less the idea. So looking for 70 to 90% of accuracy in the first 6 months, and then let's see that we can resolve, depending on each use case, between the 50 to 70 to 80% of them. So you are at the end of the day, you are talking about 40 to 70, 75% of the resolution of each request. So we have customers right now that we are receiving 5 million calls in the use cases that we can
5 million calls a day, or
5 million calls a month. So more or less 150,000, 100,000 calls per day. And so from the ones that we are 40% of all the requests, we are able to solve. And from them, we are more or less between 75 to 85% of resolution. And the accuracy,
on average across organizations.
Exactly. And the accuracy of all that we have right now is about 93% in the first attempt, sorry. So we are more in 95, 96%, because we have 2 to 3 attempts. But that's powerful, for example, in one of the customers. We have others that is more complex, as we said, because we are in insurance and we need to go for the geolocation. And this is quite tricky, because we need some omni-channel, as I said, no? Some of them are able to respond on the SMS with some APIs and so on. But funny thing is, like, for example, the resolution. So we were measuring the resolution of the human agents, and they were more or less between 50 to 55%. So from the 100 calls, they were able to register properly a call in 50 or 55 calls from the 100. We are in the same level right now with them, and we are increasing. So that's quite interesting of what we do. We are able, I don't want to say to replace what the human agent does, but at least to support the human agent on the companies, and then the human agents are able to do whatever it goes beyond that, because they have the creativity, they have the negotiation part, they have anything else, and we make companies to grow in that way, no?
Right.
If you like what you saw, take a look at the description. You'll see segments. You'll see the full podcast. Go take a look. Please go listen. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. We'll see you later.